to you. Sexual immorality, impurity, what feels good, what looks good to the eyes, just as he's tempted Eve in the garden, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. That's what all these things are. Discord and jealousy. What makes you feel like you're the boss? And so there's those things. Envy. Why don't I have it? Jealousy. Why am not I the one in charge? Drunkenness, orgies, and that's really what Satan does. He prompts us to think of self. And that's a big part of overcoming Satan. If you can say, whether it's in this room or whether it's in your living room at home, Satan's in the room and he's tempting me to put myself first in some way. And that's a big help in overcoming. Just recognizing that he's there in the room, if you will. Anyway, I just wanted to say that before we move on.
One of the things about the fruit of the Spirit is, I think we have to realize that it takes time. For these are things that we don't all of a sudden have, that we didn't have before. They take time to develop. I follow a kind of a blog on online by a man in Australia who has he calls himself self-sufficient me, and he has this huge garden and talks about growing your own vegetables and all that. And one of the things that he talked about was a fruit tree that had kind of come up out of nowhere, and it grew for, I think he said that it was growing for like 5 years until it finally bore fruit. Although the fruit didn't taste all good.
Wasn't worth it.
Rather than, after a few, you chop it down, it's never gonna get anywhere. But he waited and, until, and we just planted a tree in our backyard, a nectarine tree. And I'm just wondering how many years we had all the other trees kind of cut down because they weren't doing all that well. And so I'm wondering how many years we're gonna have to wait until we actually get some fruit from the tree. But that's one thing I think we have to be, one of the virtues is patience. And we have to realize that these things are not going to come overnight. And they may be there in one situation and in another one, maybe not.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a process.
Yeah.
Hey, Diana, if I build upon what you're saying, the way you frame that makes me think about 2 Peter 1, where it's talking about, supplement your faith with virtue and add knowledge, add self-control, add blankety blank of going through that. And, I think that's a kind of a building process. You don't have it all at once. It's as you grow in your faith, you get that. And I think that's kind of what you're saying with these.
Yes.
It's not like you're going to wake up and have it. By exercising them, you build your gentleness and your self-control, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'm just fumbling in the Bible trying to find that passage myself, but sometimes those are called the Christian graces. And as we mature, we become more graceful as Christians. These things come naturally, but sometimes they're forced. I'm going to be patient, I'm going to be gentle. And to me, that last one, self-control, is really one of the keys, isn't it, to having all of these things? We have to get kind of sometimes shake ourselves and say, I'm gonna love that person because love is a decision. Or I'm gonna be joyful in spite of difficulty because I have Jesus. I'm gonna be realize peace. And then that motivates us in the way that we deal with one another. We're not self-centered. Kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, kind of with a focus on others rather than self. So anyway, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited. Keep in step with the Spirit. That fits in with what we're saying, that it's a process sometimes to build these characteristics in our lives. The Spirit helps us, sometimes with some challenges, but always with the assurance we have that God, if He gives us something, He's saying, you can handle this in an appropriate way. So anyway, I just wanted to say a few more words about the fruits of the Spirit and so on. But chapter 6 kind of wraps it up as far as this letter is concerned. Brothers, if someone is caught in a sin, you who are spiritual should restore him gently. But watch yourself, or you also may be tempted. Do we do that a lot?
I don't think so. I think it's pretty rare. I mean, at least in my experience, for someone to actually, well, this says restore him gently, and I was gonna,
Yeah.
but to actually try, confront someone and, because I think, for one thing, I try to avoid confrontation as much as possible, but then you have the other admonition to not judge people.
Yeah.
And so you're, kind of feel torn, should I do this or not? Or am I gonna risk a friendship if I say something?
That's a tough one. Paul, in the sense, in the letter that we wrote, letters to Corinthians that we read, tries to confront a situation of sin. He says there, you ought to forgive and comfort him so that he will not be overwhelmed by excessive sorrow. Most of us are, maybe we ought to look at it from the other direction. Yeah, we ought to be restoring one another, but how would we feel if someone was trying to restore us? Most of us would say, it's none of that person's business. We might think about it later, but we kind of would feel bad to be corrected by someone else.
To me,
Or maybe you would say, maybe it depends on who the person is.
Okay, people are
Yeah.
different. That's right.
for being a Christian, restoration is very important in your life. Because you don't know your path. You may think that you are going the right way. Somebody else at your back know that you are, tripping. So if somebody tap you and say that, no, brother or sister, you are going this way, you need to take it calm and realize that you can be touched. And sometimes you are even aware of what you are doing that is wrong thing. And somebody try his or her best to, direct you. You have to take it calm as a Christian so that you move on. And if we don't receive and then we don't comfort, like the way Mom is saying, you don't comfort, and the fellow is still doing that, and then you don't know where it's going to end. And I pass through that, then whose fault?
Yeah.
You, the one who see it but didn't talk about it, you'll be blamed for, as the book said. So the best thing, you have to at least have it. But one thing we normally do is if somebody is sinning, we normally take it in a different way, not like the way Paul was saying here. We look at the fellow and say, why is he in this situation?
Okay,
Why are you doing this?
why?
Why? Why? So we rather push blame on the fellow rather than correcting him patiently, like the way Paul is saying. That's what I think.
Really, the bottom line is the next verse, isn't it? Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. How do you carry someone's burden in the context of helping them with sin? That's it. But that's the way we're supposed to look at it. I think this is one of those passages that's a paradox. It says first, carry one another's burden, and then a couple verses later, he's going to say each one must carry his own load.
I
In this
know,
version,
right?
or some of the versions say burden in both places. So, but here he's talking about sin. If we're trying to help one another, we can see that in a physical circumstance. If we're in difficulty, we help somebody, do something that's difficult for them. But in a spiritual situation, that's harder. How do you help someone in a spiritual problem?
I think one thing you could do is maybe let the person know that you're praying for them.
Yeah, yeah,
And really, that it's on your heart that, they need help to overcome whatever temptation is leading them
yeah.
astray. And that you're really concerned and pray that they're going to be able to overcome it. Maybe even, let them know that if they're feeling tempted, that they can call you and
Yeah,
talk about it and just let them know that you have a concern.
that you're not going to spread it around.
Oh,
that you're not
exactly,
gonna,
exactly.
that you're trustworthy. Maybe that you suffer from the similar temptations.
You consider verse 1, it talks about considering yourself, lest you also be tempted.
Yeah.
So you can't just lord it over someone like it couldn't happen to you. So
If someone is missing church service, it's one thing to say, you ought to be at church service, but it's another, can I come pick you up?
it's
Can
another thing.
I
That's
take
right.
care of someone to help you have time?
Mhm,
Just think of ways to minister
mhm.
in that situation.
Yes, call them and see why they haven't been coming.
Yeah,
And then maybe you can help them.
yeah, just we've missed you.
Yeah, maybe they're just discouraged, something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So I think you who are spiritual, to me, Alan, leads back to what you just started the class with, which is the fruit of the Spirit. And so, you who demonstrate those things, and it references the spirit of gentleness that's there. And, I think when it says watch yourself, that says you have empathy. You understand it's real. It's not like a finger pointing or a blaming exercise, that you want to turn that person around. And, in verse 2 where it says, and so fulfill the law, it makes me think of, in John when Jesus said that, he put a new commandment in, and that commandment was that you love one another. And if you think about that from a love perspective, a support perspective, an empathy, how can I help versus I got you. I don't think he's talking about an I got you here.
Right. That's exactly right. So sometimes it takes some soul searching to figure out how we can help carry one another's burdens. Because we're not all given to, if everybody would stand up and say, as they do in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm an alcoholic. We're all willing to say, I'm a sinner. But when it comes to being a little more specific,
I know, right? I'm not gonna say it.
we're a little bit reluctant to say, I get angry a lot, help me overcome that. I allow lust in my heart. I allow bitterness in my heart. It's a little bit harder to say those things to one another. So James says, my brothers, if one of you should wander from the truth and someone should bring him back, remember this, whoever turns a sinner from the error of his way will save him from death and cover a multitude of sins. It's a serious matter. It's saving from death.
Mhm.
Anyway, if anyone thinks he is something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Each one should test his own actions. How do you do that?
Examine your life, kind of like when you go around the communion table. That's the
Okay.
perfect time to do it, right? Supposed to do it weekly.
Or even more.
Well, you can do it daily if you want. I don't think too many of us do that, but.
To me, this is like the speck and the beam story that's there, that, before you're going and correcting someone, you might want to get the beam out of your own eye.
Okay.
That's there from a self-evaluation.
Examine self. Do I have that
I
same
like
problem?
that, Steve.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Test his own anger. It requires honesty. It requires honesty. And, thinking of that, bearing one another's burdens of sin. We all sin, and people know that. Sometimes we pretend it's not true, but people see our faults and limitations. But we don't want to be remembered for those. We want people to say, that's not really him. That's not really her. I know that was just, a slip up. But sometimes we're not, we need to have the same attitude toward others. We tend to say, well, I know him, I know her, they have this problem or they have that problem. But we're all struggling and we need to overcome that. Anyway, each one should test his own actions. Then he can take pride in himself without comparing himself to somebody else. That's the way we usually we're tempted to judge ourselves. Am I doing a little more than so-and-so? If we can find somebody that I'm doing a little better. Anyway, for each one should carry his own load or his own burden. How does that fit in with what he's just said? How does that fit in with bearing one another's burdens?
I think the idea is, generally speaking, we're to all carry our own burdens, right? Be a responsible adult person. But there's times when we get in a situation where we need some help, maybe it's an extended illness, or we lose a job or something, and we need some extra help, and that's the time we're to step in and help, get that person back up and running, again. And I think that's the idea he's giving here. We all have responsibility, but we have responsibility to help too at times.
We're each accountable And we're gonna have to bear our burdens, if you will. We're gonna be judged on what we do. And the judgment is not gonna be us saying, well, it's his fault, it's her fault. Somebody didn't correct me in the proper time. It's my parents' fault. It's the church's fault.
Yeah.
That's not gonna work.
Yeah, the chapter 1 and 2, clearly to us that we should carry each one burden, right?
Yes,
And now we are in each one for his own burden.
ultimately, we're judged.
So the chapter 1 and 2 is telling us to help each other in the manner of the way we said it earlier on. If you see a friend, a brother is going astray, try to direct him or her. If you did not see him or her, then fine. But if you see you didn't do it, you didn't carry his burden. But if you do it, then you are helping him or her to carry his burden. You are trying your best to do that. But at the same time, for all these things, each of us will carry our own burden. Whom you are, I don't know. Whom I am, you don't know. I know myself better than anyone else. So I have my own burden. Like you said first, maybe I'm also in that situation, but people are not seeing me in the situation, so I cover it up. When I see yours, then I approach you, and then I will carry my own burden in the judgment. So we should examine ourselves through that.
That's right. That's right. Each of us is in a different situation. Each of us carries a different load.
Different load at all. Different load.
Here's one. Anyone who receives instruction in the word must share all good things with his instructor. That's kind of changing the thought. I guess he's saying the worker's worthy of his hire.
Worker deserve their pay.
Yeah,
Good.
that's right. The elders are deserving of double honor if they're preachers too. Everyone passes. Thou shalt not muzzle the ox that treadeth down the corn. It's one of my favorites. Anyway, it kind of throws that in. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. The one who sows to please his sinful nature, from that nature will reap destruction. The one who sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Sometimes we emphasize the negative, sowing bad seed. But this is a kind of a reassurance also. If you sow good seed, you're going to reap a good harvest. And that's an assurance that we need. The one is a warning, and the one is an assurance. And as Diane says, it takes time for the crop to grow and to be reaped. We sow the seed, and God gives the increase. Sometimes we sow the seed, somebody else helps to nurture that seed along. Paul said that, he sows, Apollos waters, and, some of us, like Paul, wanted to sow the seed all the time. Others are more, attuned to watering and nurturing the plant. And some do both, or we do different things at different times. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Sometimes it seems that the crop is not growing that well, or is not growing very rapidly, but still we don't want to give up.
Yeah, it's hard to be patient sometimes. I think
Yeah.
a farmer has to have a ton of patience to wait out the seasons of growth, and then he has a bad year, famine, or too much rain. They get hail, all kinds of stuff that wipe out these crops, but yet they have faith. They keep growing year after year, and if they didn't, we wouldn't have food at the store to eat.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of faith, I think, to be a farmer and a lot of patience, and that's the principle here. We're to be like a farmer, you know, waiting out the crops, you know, and it's hard sometimes, it really is.
God cannot be mocked is the way he introduces that, you know. You can't sow the bad seed and then hope for the good harvest. At the same time, you have to have faith if you sow the good seed that God will give the increase. God cannot be mocked. He sees what we're doing. And so, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. And I think that's good. We try to do that, don't we, Barbara? We try to minister to all people with shoe boxes,
Right.
you know.
Because we don't even know these people.
Have no idea what their
background.
background is, where they stand, but we help them. We're just a token of, to show that somebody cares somewhere in this community. These are homeless.
For how many years now?
How many years has it been?
How many years it's been now, Barbara?
Maybe about 20 years since I've been here, but I was doing it before I came here, but we've been doing it since I came.
She said about 20 years here at Northwest. Can you
Yeah,
believe it?
yeah, I can, yes.
I know it kind of started smaller and then it just
Yeah,
kind
those
of,
40 boxes, they were all perfect.
Mushroom.
And then, we had a lot of other stuff.
we've had 200 or 300
Yeah, we usually get about 300 plus nursing homes.
nursing
Just
home.
drop-
Yeah.
Well, they got asked.
Yeah, they've been going for 40, 50 years,
Yeah.
nursing home, you know,
Yes.
what,
We're up there for over 40 years.
Yeah, that's right.
you would take stuff out.
Yeah.
Chris, Dan, you bought your own nursing home gifts
Yeah,
in
I
addition.
do my own thing.
Yeah.
Got a double treat out there,
Mhm.
but
Guess don't go there
it
anymore.
was good work, it's a shame.
No, they won't let us
You
in.
can't just drop stuff off. That's why I was gonna ask this.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you could.
See, that's why I wanted to do something, just drop off.
You
Now we get back to the lesson.
ever do good and be tired? Do you ever do good and then somebody else encounter that good with bad and you were fed up?
I don't
I don't
know.
know you understand what I mean, please. You were doing a good thing to satisfy somebody,
Yeah,
but you rather encounter with the bad
it turns out bad, you mean?
to you.
Oh,
So you were fed up. I'm doing you good. See what you are doing to me. So I'm fed up.
okay.
I won't continue. Did that ever happen? If you read the book of 1 Peter 2:20, it said, even if you're a Christian and you were treated doing good wrongfully, still continue with your good thing that you were doing.
Yeah.
You see, there are certain things, it's not easy in our life as a human flesh. As a human flesh, because once you are human flesh, if you are doing good to somebody and the fellow is going other wayward, you get fed up or
Yeah.
get angry.
Sometimes what we're trying to do is misconstrued, like you say. And then some people think it's bad. Some people, Paul was trying to do good and he was accused of, oh, you're just in it for the money, Paul, or, you know, you're just, you want to be the boss or, you know, misconstrued.
That's why I was a tent maker, making the tents on the side.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have to pay them anything, so
Yeah.
they couldn't make false
And
accusations.
then they said, you don't have the courage to ask for something.
That's going the extra mile. He
Yeah,
went the extra mile.
but he kept on.
But Jesus was misunderstood too.
Jesus.
All the time.
That's right.
People misunderstood him, and accused him of all kinds of stuff that were not true.
Yeah, sometimes we think if we're trying to do the right thing, it's gonna just be accepted, but
It can happen to us too.
it
We're doing a good work and somebody thinks, well, you're just doing that to show off.
Yeah.
For your own ego or something, It's not true. It's done for Christ,
Yeah,
but they don't see that, 'cause they don't understand how a Christian's motivated, to do things.
You have to keep doing it, even though your boss refused.
Yeah, you just have to plow through like the farmer, keep plowing,
Yeah.
plowing that row. And he reaps a crop eventually. Most seasons, not always.
If you don't take care, even outsiders, once you are doing it, they are seeing that what you are doing is not pleasing the fellow, but you are still doing it. They would rather will be telling you, why don't you stop? Why don't you, move on, stop doing all these things. I can't remember in our church, if you come at times, we have a season of food crops, like yam or this kind of things. So you have a place, when you order the yam, it will come plenty. You send a small money, they will bring you plenty yam. So I normally send the money and they will bring the yam and then we share it to the church. And those outside would ask, which church is this? And they will be sharing yam. They'll be sharing food. And then people will be still talking about it and talking about it. Things like that, if you are not in spirits, you are not in the spirits, and you don't understand what you are doing, you draw back.
yeah.
You draw back. See,
Well,
so these things are very important in
Yeah.
our life.
each of us, I prefer to give in such a way that the glory goes to Jesus. But we all have opportunities from day to day to give in the community just to help people. And to the extent that we can give the glory to Jesus, that's great. But however we do it, we're helping people, and that fits in with this. It's great if we can give in the name of Jesus, in the name of the church. We put those Christmas cards and cards in the box that says the gift is from the Northwest Church.
Yeah,
of
that's
Christ.
what I like about that.
Yeah.
Adding that, who it's from.
I don't know if anybody's come to the door of the church because they're not, but maybe they will.
Probably not. But you're still collecting Christmas cards, by the way, right?
I've got a
I got about
box.
50 of them at home. If you want them, I'll bring them.
You still have more to do?
I've got a few, but I've got plenty for this year.
Oh,
So should I hold on to mine then, or bring them?
Bring them if you want.
I got a big
let him.
growing.
Anyway,
Keep
we
sending
better
them.
go on. See what large letters I use as I write to you with my own hand, suggesting that the previous part of the letter has probably been dictated to amanuensis, they call it in the old term, secretary, somebody who's written it down. And now Paul is signing or adding something in his own hand.
Wasn't Silas one of kind of his secretary? Silas there, and I think he was.
He was a companion of him.
He had vision problems.
Well, that's why some people think that the thorn in the flesh that Paul
I
had
think it was.
may have been myopia.
They didn't have good light like we do today. They had candlelight if they were lucky in the dungeons somewhere, trying to write something. And I mean, it's very hard in the eyes just to begin with. Even if you had good sight, it'd be harder.
Those who want to make a good impression outwardly are trying to compel you to be circumcised. And we could refer to Patrick's sermon, right? Adding to the gospel. The only reason they do this is to avoid being persecuted for the cross of Christ. People are kind of just going along because they're afraid of the Jews. They're afraid somebody will criticize them.
Well, they can be pretty critical.
Yeah,
And they come down hard at the legalistic stand,
yeah. Not even those who are circumcised obey the law. As he said before, if you're going to do part of it, it's not just part, but you really have to do it all. But some people just want the outward sign. Yet they want you to be circumcised that they may boast about your flesh. Well, may I never boast except in the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ, through which the world has been crucified to me and I to the world. crucified, and the world has been crucified to me and I to the world.
The world had died to him. That's what
Yeah,
he's saying. Crucifixion is all about death.
yeah,
And so Christ, he felt he had died inside. And that's why he was so effective. You know, he could crucify himself and then go out and leave everything else up to Jesus, you know, live for him. It's a challenge for all of us.
it's a challenge for sure. I mean, most of we're in the world, we deal with the world every day. It's hard to say, well, I'm just,
Yeah.
the world has been crucified to me.
Yeah, no, it's a strong statement.
But it's, what's he talking about there? The
So,
temptation?
Alan,
Yeah,
so if you think about the song that we sing a lot of times before the Lord's Supper, "When I Survey the Wondrous Cross," I mean, that's almost a direct quote. Verse 14 is almost a direct quote of the second verse of that song, which says, "Forbid it, Lord, that I should boast, save in the death of Christ my Lord." I mean, it might be easier for us to think about what does he mean as we think about that song versus what's in the verse, but that's just a direct quote, basically.
yeah. What do we have to boast in ultimately that's not gonna pass away? It's really not that important, you know. I'm crucified to the world, but the world still tempts us. So maybe that's, as we said, a process. More and more, we kind of, the world is crucified to us and vice versa. And the temptations become less. Hopefully that's the case.
They become less, but we can't let ourselves become complacent either and think, oh, you know, I don't have to worry about those things anymore, because it can happen anytime.
We should be in that process as we grow older. But sometimes older people are tempted in different ways, tempted to become bitter, or to just say, well, I don't have to worry about temptation anymore. I'm older.
No, there's always temptation. Till the day you die, there's gonna be some kind of temptation around you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just eating too much, whatever.
Yeah.
It's simple things, but it's always there.
But that's a tragedy when someone has, you know, lived a good life and then kind of lets it all go when they become more mature.
I have a Filipino friend. I've been always saying, preaching the gospel to, and he told me when you go to Filipino, the young man don't go to church. Only the old ladies and the grandpas, the retirement, they are going to church to pray for forgiveness of their sins. Because as for the youth, they are singing every day, so they don't go to church. So he will never attend church.
Yeah.
That's what he told me. Unless he is old and retired.
Some people think, well, I don't need it.
You get forgiven before you die.
Well, we'll finish up here. Neither circumcision nor uncircumcision means anything. What counts is a new creature. Peace and mercy to all who follow this rule, even to the Israel of God. That's what he's been talking about for 6 chapters, that spiritual Israel is meaningful, not physical Israel. Finally, let no one cause me trouble, for I bear on my body the marks of Jesus. And he could, show the scars. We probably can't show the marks of Jesus in the same way. But we bear some scars. The grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with your spirit, brothers. Amen. So, any final comments on Galatians? We'll go on next week and begin Ephesians. That's the way we're been doing this journey for quite some time.
We're just going through the Bible. I mean,
Going through the New Testament. Yeah, we haven't done that in a while.
Well, we used to cover the Bible every 4 years, you know, with
Yeah,
gospel advocate
Yeah.
material in our adult class, but kind of gotten away from that.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's good that we just keep going through it, I think, and
yeah,
cover the whole thing, and there's so much in there. And we tend to forget some of it, you know, none of us remembers everything, and
that's right.
we like to do these classes, so you gotta keep going
You
over
can
it
do
every
it.
so often.
So we'll leave you with this question. What other book in the New Testament is Ephesians most similar to?
Romans?
Well, we'll answer it next time.
Oh, okay, now we got to study, got homework.
Yeah.